COVID-19 is the biggest challenge of our lifetimes.
This country has faced for decades.
The number of cases is set to rise sharply.
All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer.
We must do all we can to slow it down and save lives.
This evening, I must give the British people a very simple
Washing our hands regularly is important.
Stay at home.
But we must also reduce the number of people we meet and come into contact with.
You should not be meeting family members who do not
live
in your
That means staying at home if you or anyone in your house has a high temperature or a new and persistent cough.
So the pandemic was actually terrifying, that you couldn't go out
this is
when
really hard.
You wanted to.
Everything's just merged into one.
I lost all my business.
We were all in the house together. And
everything was quieter.
Just on top of each other.
And of course everything went.
At the start of lockdown, I thought, oh great, I'm going to get some time off work because I come under the shielding category. After about 2 weeks, I had enough of it already.
And sometimes it could get pretty, lonely, I guess is the right word, not seeing anybody really, except my son, who only came to the door. And I found that hard. Probably because the first one I didn't go out, out and about as much as I could have and should have. I think we were more scared and more worried about things.
We were not allowed off the island. We were not allowed to go close to people on the island. You really are isolated compared to your normal life. Yeah, it was hard.
In the first lockdown, I lost all my business. So I had a catering company and I looked after houses, holiday houses, and of course everything went. So that was my income gone.
Lockdown 1 was it was a bit novel. The fact that it was happening globally as well, it was kind of like there was that sense of we're all in this together now. But then all my work got cancelled. Do a lot of work going out with afternoon and stuff, working across Scotland. So that was really, really stressful.
I was working 3 days a week in the pub, and then of course when the pandemic struck, and it became very difficult because you were having to interrogate people that were coming in for a quick pint and what's your phone number and where do you live and what are you doing here?
I was living and working in Loughor because I lived at work. I lived in the hotel I worked in, and when the pandemic struck, it was the case that we all had to leave the hotel and leave staff accommodation, and I understood, but it was a bit like, I'm homeless. Good job I can go back to my parents and I'm comfortable with my parents.
We were supposed to come and live with our daughter on the island of Kerala over there for a few months.
Before the pandemic struck, my father took ill and we found out that he needed heart surgery.
And by the time the medical team had decided what they were going to do and not do, the pandemic appeared. But it did help in the fact that I had to isolate. What better place to be than on an island?
So the pandemic was actually terrifying at first because we were already sheltering my dad from people. So it was a very tense time, and especially for them. So we felt relieved that we could have them protected over here.
The lockdown happened, there was two things. One, it felt a bit better for myself. For example, when I went for a walk around the bay, there wasn't really as many people to sort of bump into, and it was a bit more suited for me because it was a bit more quieter, but it also restricted me from going to LGBT meetings in Glasgow. But because of the COVID, that had stopped.
The isolation was a big low. Not being able to see my friends, not being able to see other family members.
Not being able to go and see my grandchildren. That was pretty hard.
It was very, very hard, and especially I've got a daughter that was at college, and she found it extremely hard because it all just stopped and went to Zoom. I've got a foster son as well. He wasn't able to see his mum, so it was extremely difficult for him.
Obviously, like anyone else, there are sad times. We haven't been able to see either our children or grandchildren for over 2 years. Yes, it was certainly better having my wife with me, we decided right at the very beginning that because I wasn't in good health, we would have to do serious lockdown. And we used to wake up every morning and we would just plan what we were going to do for the day. And I think that's the way we really got through it.
I think the lows was not getting to see people and having to do everything virtually, and then having so many plans and so many things booked for last year and everything being cancelled.
Last year it was pretty tough. I work in a quarry. I drive a bulldozer. I'm basically on my own when I go to work. I've been suffering a bit with depression and stuff like that.
It was a bit of a struggle, to be fair, to begin with. We were all in the house together and just on top of each other and didn't seem to get your own space. I think that and the fact that because I don't keep well anyway, I couldn't really go out.
The first lockdown was in a very good position because I had a really close friend living here and it was wonderful weather. So that first lockdown was almost idyllic, but then the last lockdown was completely different on my own. It was winter, so you couldn't really go out much. The only thing that got me out was my rescue dog. And if I hadn't had that, I'd actually tried to think what might have happened.
In the winter, it was completely different because it was darker, quicker, it was cold and wet. I became that person that sits behind the screen for most of the part of the day, and I didn't like that.
And I think, like many people, at the start of it all, I started drinking a lot more, and then I was like, hang on a minute, I've never done this. Why is this new habit crept in? But I think it was something that we all did to sort of cope with not having anything else to do.
I guess a lot of it is that motivation, finding it difficult to get motivated and stay motivated, especially when you hear like, oh, there's another wave, or we might be going back into lockdown. It's just like, what's the point? Why am I bothering?
From March last year to maybe June, July, my mental health was the worst it had been in a number of years, and I honestly believe that to be because of the lockdown. My main problem is anxiety, post-traumatic stress, and I had learned from suffering from over 30 years, I'd learned how to cope with it. I was quite surprised how quickly it started coming back. It just seemed to take over again.
I haven't been off the island since last summer, so I've been avoiding buses because of sharing the bus with COVID. It's knocked me out of my routine as well. Like being autistic, I'm not really good at socialising in big crowds.
I felt really, really low and depressed in January. I think accessing kind of mental health support, although there's all the telephone numbers you can phone, it was that feeling through the pandemic that services are available but not really available.
When I really needed that extra support, I reached out to some of my friends that are involved with mental health. Some of the stuff they were telling me to do was really important, even though I knew what I was supposed to be doing, I didn't actually listen to myself.
Going out for walks and trying to keep myself as positive as possible, and then having chats with friends up here on Zoom and things like that. And then it was the second lockdown, then it was like, oh, here we go again. I think that's when my mental health dropped quite a lot, and that's when it was talking to people and making sure I was going out on walks that really did help.
The MS can have quite a knock-on effect with my mental health as well, so it was quite hard to battle with the two of them at the same time.
I've actually faced a lot of my own sort of mental health issues and things that I've been dealing with or thinking that I've been dealing with. I also had a relationship breakdown as well at the same time, so that was hard. You know, sharing a space with your ex-partner in lockdown it's a wee bit difficult, to say the least.
I think it makes you want to stay where you are and think, I don't really want to go out again.
I'm used to living alone, but because you couldn't go out and all you could do was get your basic shopping, never really saw people, it felt very lonely.
Well, I'm on a motorbike. I can go round Glencoe and back. There's no passing COVID anywhere, you know what I mean? Golf is restricted for whatever reason I do not know, because you're in a big park and you can be metres and metres away from each other and you're open air, you know, so, and then you shut it down. It was crazy.
I was just sitting up there really feeling crap, thinking what am I existing for? The kids were kicking their ball off my car. The taunts were getting to me, it was getting me on edge. I was getting really shaky, and I'm still on the waiting list for Sandyford. That's another thing that gets me down a bit. My arm hair started growing thicker, like round there as well, and I'm having dysphoria with my facial hair.
I actually had a bit of a mini breakdown on Christmas Day. Me and my ex-partner, we were trying to do the best that we could, and we got everything planned, and then come Christmas Day I just couldn't do anything. Just hit rock bottom. I stayed in my bed all day, which is not like me, and I was there for 2 days. Yeah, and then in the end I was on the phone to my doctor. And that's when I realised then that I needed more help.
Just before lockdown was beginning to deal with some personal trauma, and then lockdown happened and my counsellor was like, you can't come and see me right now, and I was like, oh, okay.
After surgery, I had to take it easy, but I could still get out and walk and not meet anybody.
I was actually okay because of, I think what happened was my childhood kicked in. Where having been brought up on an island, you had to learn to do things.
I grew up in Africa, separated from family for long periods of time. And you get used to seeing or living with strange circumstances. I think I was able to cope mentally better with what's happening in the pandemic.
But on my off duty, I've been building a new home, so that kept me full on busy. Interest in trying to source materials and trying to get joiners on site and all that became quite problematic during lockdown.
My husband was furloughed for 3 months. We just got right into the garden and I did some knitting. I think the important thing was a routine. We got up, we had breakfast, we spent a lot of time together. We just always had a project, which was the garden.
But during that period though, you don't do nothing, you sit in the house. It's the same with my weight. That gets me down. Then it affects everything else. So I started walking, ended up doing 8 miles.
I've done quite a bit of cycling during the first lockdown, and then I've just been trying to keep myself active, just trying to keep myself busy. I did a lot of work in the garden over the winter, which is probably not the best time to go gardening, but it got me out of the house, so that was the main thing.
Especially in the lockdown where you all have this enforced kind of barriers where you're maybe living in closer contact than you want to. It was really important that I could come out here and start growing vegetables. And something to focus on other than just the fear of what was going on globally.
The highs were having company to help me through it all. And the people on the island were very, very kind.
So I've started walking out here about every day, all over, up and down. I just love coming up here, I do. And volunteering at it. I enjoy that, which I've missed very much.
And had to decide to do something, so I started getting into cycling again. I started getting into open water swimming. The two of them started giving me a wee boost, so that managed to keep my mental health level.
I did the virtual time trial, which was really good. It was hard to do on your own, but it motivated me. I have lost 2 stone.
I can honestly say I didn't really find lockdown too difficult. What I can tell you is what made it easy. There are so many new skills I learnt. I decided to do some multi-track recordings so I could actually create a whole band or orchestra. I've also done a lot of music writing. Since the beginning of lockdown, I've done 22 university courses, all on history.
My health wasn't too bad because I was going out cycling and walking, and because we've got the dogs, we had that excuse in the first lockdown. My fitness level has gone up.
Yeah, I think for me, sort of like taking time out and doing some self-care properly. I downloaded an app on my phone called Calm because I just wanted to teach myself how to meditate, how to switch off, how to deal with stress.
Jock was my rock. He seemed to understand when I was feeling low, and he was happy when I was happy. Yeah.
The contrast of lockdown showed how busy people's lives are, and there was something lovely about just that, as if there was a big pause and the earth got a big sigh of relief. I felt really blessed to have a community. For people to be friendly to each other on the island, albeit from a distance, it kind of helped to allay those anxieties and fears that everybody was feeling.
There are local charities and the resilience team, just all volunteers who were pulling together to supply food prescriptions to people who couldn't go out the house.
It's been one thing that's drawn the community together. You know, I have friends in the local shinty club and they volunteered their minibus to go out and do the food delivery parcels, and there's a group called the Bute Resilience Group. I know they've been out looking after people and that's all been good for the community feel.
It is quite a community supportive island. You just have to be aware of somebody perhaps needing help. Quite often people are not, they won't accept it, but you can give it quietly. So it's just maybe looking out for people who are lonely.
Mainly people living on their own. It was really important to make sure that they didn't feel even more isolated.
I think it allowed my wife quite a lot to keep me going, to be honest, and the kids.
I had one person that I saw on a regular basis, and of course my mother, because she lives out in Appin and she was all on her own.
Well, I relied very much on my good wife, a lovely wife, and well, obviously my daughter. Just being there and the love.
Two mates I've grew up with, and we've been about together for 55 years. We talk each day, every day. We had great support.
During the first lockdown, we were only maybe doing 3 sailings a day to the island, but we still kept the ferry going on a daily basis.
And I worry too much about other people sometimes, and I kept thinking, if I'm feeling that way, and I've got my son every day at my door, how would someone, without anybody coming daily? So I thought about that a lot too.
And people kind of put their differences aside and were a lot more supportive of each other, and I think that was very tangible.
So one of my friends lives in Edinburgh, but she lives by herself. Almost seeing how rubbish she's felt by herself has made me grateful that even though when I'm stuck in the house with my parents and we're all just like getting annoyed at each other, actually this is better than being by myself.
We all kind of relied on each other, to be honest. We tried to do family stuff together as much as we could in the house and get them out swimming and stuff. But we actually had quite a lot of good conversations.
I've got a friend that's a minister, a Baptist minister, and I've kind of joined the church as well, so I've become I like to say I'm an apprentice Christian.
I went into the supermarket and I met a lady and she lived on her own, and she said, do you know, it's just so nice to stand and talk to somebody.
To go round and pop in on people, that feeling of a support network, of knowing there's people there you can call on, and even if it was just shout from the gate.
If I was looking at my life now, what the biggest advantage has probably been the internet, because we can still keep in touch with people with Zoom, and I think that certainly has helped.
More streaming of events is great, that's the one big thing, but also probably FaceTiming and Zooming with family and friends more as well, because that did happen.
When the pandemic was at its height, they were down to 2 ferries a day, and you had to really have a really good excuse to get off the island or on the island.
You are conscious, apart from my immediate family, of not seeing people and talking to people in the way that one normally does. And even now, you're being very careful about who you get in touch with.
I was very lucky because I'd learned to play bridge just before the pandemic. And the other thing that I've got involved with is Macmillan Move More. It's an exercise class. It's been really, really good. And I think that's because I've been able to help people.
I think one of the positive things of the pandemic overall is it's created a sense of community. And that shared experience, I think, which is something that we should remember and hold on.
The guys I work with have been amazing and have given me a lot of confidence to go and do a lot of keep fit things, but they're just so positive. We're like a little family, so we can talk to each other about anything.
There was quite a lot of support online as well, a couple of quite big Facebook groups for the island.
Getting involved with Dunoon Pride has really helped. Being part of a team, focusing on project work with stuff has really helped.
The thing that struck me was how the atmosphere in the community changed. That was quite noticeable, and how everyone became much more friendly, much more touchy-feely.
The yoga lady actually set up a walk-talk group. It's really good because everybody's there for each other. It's formed different friendships that have been very valuable.
It's not all for nothing. And I'm hoping that the pandemic will have made better people of us, you know, and I think it's pulled a lot of people together.
I go to Argyll Wellbeing Hub, but that's been a real support for me for the last 3 years, in fact.
I've seen a mental health social worker on the island.
There was very good communication locally, particularly on Facebook and the Lade Centre. There was a listening service.
Argyll Wellbeing Hub. Oh, that was a lifesaver. We did that on Zoom, which a lot of boys didn't like. They wouldn't do it, but some of us didn't. We kept it going, and that kept us together.
When I phoned the doctor, because I was having a bit of a meltdown to myself, to be honest. I just wasn't dealing with it very well at all. And that was kind of towards the tail end of the first lockdown. The CPN was in the phone within an hour.
What this pandemic has done, or hopefully will do, is kind of highlight how sensitive we are as people and the need for mental health support. Because I personally think once lockdown's over, it's not going to, all of a sudden everyone's going to be happy and great again. This could be like post-traumatic stress for some people as well. And as for Argyll and Bute specifically, I do think there needs to be a greater awareness of mental health services and also decreasing the stigma of it.
I think when it comes to mental health services, I think there's a lot more could be done by the local authorities to make services more available and to be able to give people that confidence to go and use them and to be assured that it's all right to be not all right.
Advertising, if you want to call it that, on media and social media, to say, if you feel like this is how to get in touch. So I think just regular reposts of, this is what we offer, this is the help you can get, we're still here.
Listen to the guys that know, because, you know, these scientists are not just pulling it out of the air of what's going on. You know, lockdown should have happened a lot earlier. We wouldn't be in this mess now.
Could it have been sorted sooner? I think it maybe could have. They could have done a lot more, I think, to prevent it getting as bad as it did. Just to follow the rules, just to follow the guidelines.
I would hope they'd lock down the borders quicker, look after the NHS staff a lot better than they did. It was pretty shocking what these nurses and doctors have to put up with.
We spend so much time making things as accessible as we can do, but remember that often the people who really need the help are not going to be the ones to ask for it. Sometimes it's not good enough to say, well, we're here and we're ready when you are.
Having shifted back to Oban, I was unknown. I was just a number. I should have been having physiotherapy to assist with post-operative. I didn't know anything about. As wonderful as NHS is, and it is absolutely fantastic, there was no local support until the inoculations came along, and our first one, it was then, you know, I was asked how I was getting on, and I said, well, I don't know.
Just before lockdown, I had my DLA. I was getting that for about 19 years, and since I changed my name when I came out to something that I liked, my DLA stopped, and that's also made things difficult for me, and the COVID's put a delay on that.
You know, we've heard through Pride that particularly for people living out in the sticks and stuff, they're so isolated, and some of them have had to move back in with family members who aren't accepting and, you know, actively are against who they are and their identity. I can't imagine how awful that must have to be, never mind on top of a pandemic.
I certainly think the lines of health, not only mental health but physical health as well, especially sexual health, because everything sort of stopped. People that were being treated for HIV and AIDS, people didn't know where they could turn to. Also trans people who were busy going through transitions. It was the case of that they found it more difficult because, again, everything stopped. They didn't know who they could turn to. Everyone felt like they were just abandoned. And they're like, well, how do I get my medication? Especially in a rural area where a lot of people already had to travel to Glasgow to get treatment.
There's not enough done to promote mental health in men. Men especially aren't exactly just going to go and ask for help. You know what I mean? It's the last thing they're going to do. So I think making it more accessible and making it not so much of a taboo subject, I think that would help quite a lot actually. think just the sheer amount of people that have sadly lost their lives during the pandemic and their families not being able to grieve properly, it's been such a horrible time for people.
There's a lot worse off than me, a lot worse. Financially, people are struggling as well. A lot of businesses going to go to the wall, and I'm not getting enough support.
I think just the mess it's been is what I'll remember. I know to a degree like you can never really be prepared for something like this. I feel like there wasn't even like any kind of contingency plan.
So it is the case of life has always going to be changed because of what's happened in the last 18 months, and there'll be little things that we've learned that we'll always remember.
My partner, who works in the music industry, I was only seeing him maybe once every 2 weeks, made the decision not to stay in Glasgow in lockdown, but moved in with us, so that was a massive change. And then of course I completely changed direction in my working life, so everything has just kind of changed for the better.
And we're back to volumes and volumes of tourists coming onto the island, and it's not the people themselves, it's the trying to get across and too many people with not enough services, and you know, you feel it, you just think there was something lovely about the peace and quiet.
I feel more comfortable and confident because we have been vaccinated and we're definitely moving in the right direction, but I don't believe we're out of the woods yet.
I think opening things back up and getting things back to how they were is the only way we can progress forward. We were out at Gannavon the other day, and the amount of camper vans and people about, I just thought it was brilliant. It was really good to see so many people in the town as well.
Not spend so much time worrying about work and just do what you need to do and then walk away from it, and then it's family time.
The flexibility of where you work, that should be the norm.
For people with disabilities and additional needs, they have been for years told, oh actually you can't work remotely, it's just not possible. Well, it is possible. We've all been doing it, the whole world has been doing it for the past year. If companies and organisations continue to exclude people who actually there's no need to exclude, they're just being ableist.
It's made me take that extra step into choosing the career path that I wanted to do.
To be a bit more thoughtful of other people and just take into consideration that other people are dealing with stuff too.
People think everything's now hunky-dory and we can just act as we used to. It's not. Even with inoculations, it's not 100% proof. I just wish people were a bit more careful, a bit more conscious of not what they're doing, but what they can do to others unknowingly.
Shaking hands, hugging, I see no reason to go back to doing that. You know, we're more conscious about our hygiene.
It's very easy to say that's it all over, we've gotten, vaccinated. I still think we have to be very, very careful.
And I'm still cautious about where I'm going and what I'm doing, but I think living in Dunoon is helping with that, because a busy day in Dunoon is like a quiet average day anyway.
We're not going to get rid of this infection, and it's going to mutate, and we're going to have problems. So it's going to be a new normal, I think, that for a very, very long time.
As humans, we're all great at adapting, and I think we have adapted. It took a while, but we've adapted very slowly to make things work.
What I hope we've learned from this experience is that we are all connected. So that little virus came out of that one place and has spread across the world, because what one person does affects everybody else.
I think the message would be that we've got to stick together. We've got to see this out.
I think as a person it's definitely changed me. I think it's made me more tolerable of other people, if that makes sense. I think a bit more understanding and a bit more patience with people as well.
I will give more time for myself and not be overcommitted.
So I hope that there is less of a focus on living to work and more of a focus on work is one part of my life.
People were much more friendly, much more considerate and much more thinking of their neighbours.
The LGBT meetings, but I've joined both through Zoom. I've never done Zoom before, and I've done 3 now.
It's changed me through what I've done, through the experiences of learning. There are things that perhaps I wouldn't have done if it hadn't been for the pandemic.
Now age 75, each day is very important.
I've become more able to talk to people about mental health and things like that. Before, it was something that I would always stay quite private about.
You know, so it's good to talk, and just to talk about small problems, big problems, share it.
I've realised that I don't like being alone as much as I thought I did. So I'm actively looking for somebody to share my life with.
It's given me the opportunity to shine a mirror against myself and kind of accept me for who I am.
I would like to think I'm more tolerant of what's happening round about me. I don't fly off the handle maybe just as much as I used to.
Get myself out the doors, you can start up walking, then cycling, so I'm a wee bit lighter.
Keep yourself busy and do something productive or creative.
You've got to be more aware of those around you and not just yourself.
We've all had time to reflect on what's important to us and to be grateful for what we've got.
I feel a lot happier than I was. I think I'm more positive and I'm definitely a lot healthier.